Around the world, millions of Tibetans are living in exile, having fled Chinese rule. Like this community of 3,000 Tibetan refugees here in New Delhi, India. They dream of one day returning to their homeland. Leading their struggle for the last 50 years is one of the world's most recognized spiritual leaders. I'm Fawzia Ibrahim. In this edition of 101 East, we speak exclusively to the Dalai Lama. March 2008. Tibet is rocked by violence. What started with monks peacefully marking the 49th anniversary of a failed Tibetan uprising against China quickly escalated into widespread protests. China says rioters killed at least 19 people, but Tibetan exiles claim security forces killed dozens of protesters. Some observers said the riots were an embarrassment to China as it geared up to host the Olympic Games. Global sympathy for the Tibetan cause manifested in protests against the Olympics. China blamed Tibet's Dalai Lama for instigating the violence.
He has done something recently. That is, he planned a serious violent criminal incident in Lhasa. The Dalai Lama used his speeches and activities and proved what he called peace and no violence is total lies.
The Dalai Lama, in turn, expressed disappointment in his people.
If people, you see, or say they utilize the violent method, then I totally against. If, you see, things become out of control, a violent thing become out of control, then my option, I resign.
But more significantly, last year's riots showed a distinct split in the Tibetan community. For 50 years, Tibetans have looked to their exiled leader Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama, for guidance in their approach to China. He has continually emphasized a non-violent diplomatic middle way as he gently pushes for Tibetan autonomy under China's government. But younger Tibetans, frustrated by Chinese rule, are instigating a more aggressive approach they hope will lead to independence. In a significant shift, the Dalai Lama recently acknowledged his middle way was going nowhere.
Things are not improving inside Tibet. Our approach never sort of affect inside situation. Chinese suppression increasing. I cannot pretend it's something okay. No. I have to accept failure.
He convened a summit of exiled Tibetan lamas in Dharamsala last November in a bid to find a unified approach to China. The exiles voted to continue their spiritual leaders' push for greater autonomy, further frustrating those seeking total independence from Beijing. It's been 50 years since the Dalai Lama went into exile in India. Aged 74, he suffered several bouts of ill health, and questions of his successor have begun to rise. There are also fears that without him, the culture and traditions of Tibet that the Dalai Lama left half a century ago could vanish forever. Your Holiness, thank you very much for speaking with us. In the beginning, you asked for an independent Tibet, and now you're seeking greater autonomy. You support one China policy, and now you seek greater autonomy. Why has your message changed?
At the beginning, at the UN, we approached UN, and UN also, they discuss about human rights. And then one resolution mentioned including self-determination. Then at that time, our sort of stand, not sort of fixed. But then, 74, the China still in Cultural Revolution. But in India or Dharamsala, then with our sort of leaders, few leaders, we set up our mind. Sooner or later, we have to discuss with the Chinese government. So the middle approach, not seeking separation, but seeking genuine autonomy.
But after 50 years in exile, are you willing to admit that perhaps the middle way has failed?
After 10th March last year, one aspect of middle approach, that is develop sort of trust between, with Chinese government, and some concrete sort of result that and improvement inside Tibet. That failed. So then I asked people what to do, and we had one meeting, public, around 600 delegates in Dharamsala. Then 6 days they discussed. Then finally they endorsed our existing sort of way of approach, middle wave approach.
There are the younger Tibetans who want to instigate a more active approach. They say the middle way is not working. And there is a lot of fear that with you, if you are no longer around to lead this united front, that there is a possibility the Tibetan cause, the Tibetan society may actually disintegrate, because you have radical groups on one side, you have people who support the middle way on the other side. Do you have this same concern?
6 million Tibetan, and the refugee community about 150,000. Different views, okay, but everyone, you see, strong feeling about one Tibetan. We, right from the beginning, strictly non-violent approach. Now here also, some people, you see, get the radical Tibetan. Some people, you see, consider them as a more violent sort of type. No, like Tibetan youth organization. Right from the beginning, they fight for complete independence. So they're very, very critical about our approach, middle wave approach. But as far as non-violence is concerned, they also fully support. Some individual sometimes just express out of their too much emotion, a little bit sort of violent sort of tune. But basically, entire Tibetan population outside, I think, fully support non-violent struggle. Then the inside Tibet, which is some out of desperate sort of feeling, sometimes they express a little bit sort of violent type, but actually Tibetan, inside Tibet also, is a very much sort of believe non-violent struggle is the right way.
The Chinese officials are going to mark March 28th this year as Surf Emancipation Day. They say that it is a time to celebrate because you left Tibet and they freed the slaves and the serfs of Tibet. What do you say to that?
I think that ceremony, that was, I think, the celebration, I think should take since 60.
Why?
So-called, they liberated 59. So then every year should take the celebration. But it's never done. Only this year.
Why do you think then it is only this year that they've decided to make it?
I think they are quite sort of anxiety. You know, there's not much sort of thing to show positive. So they, one thing, you see, they find now that's good to show the world as well as the Tibetan.
They say that they came and they freed millions of Tibetan serfs and millions of Tibetan slaves. Were there these serfs and slaves then under your reign?
The system, not democratic, that's true. Particularly since, I think, last more than 300 years, the Dalai Lama institution is the both head of temporal as well as spiritual. I think these are, I think, old-fashioned or old sort of old practice, must go. So we already made very clear, in as far as in refugee community is concerned, since 2001, we already have elected political leadership. Since then, my position is something like semi-retired position. Then the one institution, Dalai Lama institution, as a head of both, is gone.
How do the conservatives, so conservative Tibetan Buddhists, how are they taking to these democratic changes that you are setting forth?
No one complaining. Everybody support that. And I think it's a Buddhist tradition. If you know Buddhist tradition is very, very realistic, not dogmatism. They accept the fact. So new situation, new reality, new sort of approach, it's very necessary. So from Buddhist concept, from Buddhist viewpoint, these are realistic. I don't think it's a sort of what's it, a contradiction.
We're going to take a break now, sir. When we come back after the break, join us on 101 East as we speak exclusively with His Holiness the Dalai Lama.